resources up for amendment in the ongoing constitutional amendment exercise. All women bills failed. And Governor of Edo State, Godwin Obaseki, has raised an alarm over the dwindling revenue. He says national cake no longer enough. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Wakimale in Abuja. One of those programs that you perhaps will not forget in a long time. The reasons are that it's not every day that you find your constitution being amended. This perhaps going to be the 5th alteration, and some of the things that came out of their exercise today are landmark. Some of it sad, some of it mixed feelings. We look at the bright side, and we talk about the sad part also. But let's begin tonight on the program by telling you what the Edo State Governor, Godwin Obaseki, is saying is of the firm view that Nigeria needs to increase its revenue in order to address complaints over the sharing formula, which, according to him, is the reason for agitations from some quarters in the country. Mr. Obaseki is also of the opinion that the federal government is spending too much of the dwindling resources of recurrent expenditures, including human personnel emoluments, just to fulfill the Federal Character Commission policy. Take a listen to the governor.
The issue for us in Nigeria should be how to bake a bigger cake. Because the cake we are trying to share has become too small. So no matter how you try to divide that cake and share it, many people will still feel that they are not getting their fair share of what is due to them. Because whatever they get might just be marginal or will not mean too much. So that is a real issue. That makes your job as commissioners very, very challenging.
It's not the first time you hear Governor Obaseki speak about the state of the economy. He's always warned about the issue of the revenue. There's another warning that is coming from him. But that's not our focus tonight on the program. Before we get into the meat of the matter tonight, here are some of your political roundup stories.
To achieve the following.
The Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, has asked men and officers of the Nigerian Police Force to acquaint themselves with the provisions of the newly signed Electoral Act ahead of the 2023 general elections. The IG says this is important to ensure none of his men and officers run foul of the law and to also guard against any kind of abuse. In Imo State, the All Progressives Congress has decried comments by the People's Democratic Party that the just concluded by-election for the Ngor State constituency was marred by irregularities. The chairman of APC in the state, McDonald Ebere, described the comment as laughable, insisting that the victory of the APC at the polls was a demonstration of the fact that the party's candidate was a true choice of the electorate and the APC-led administration is in tune with the people at the grassroots. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has fixed May the 27th for judgment in the legal tussle on the leadership of the APC in Imo State. However, the leadership of the State Executive Committee under Mr. Dan Wafo and believed to be loyal to former Governor Rochas Okorocha will remain in office to pilot affairs of the party until the judgment is delivered. Justice Olukayode Ariwola, who led a 5-man panel of justices, announced that all issues raised in the appeal instituted by the APC will be properly addressed and arrive at a just conclusion. And the Federal High Court sitting in Jalingo, the Taraba state capital, has declared the State Congress of the APC in the state as illegal and therefore is in nullity. This followed a suit filed by a group of members of the party who cited irregularities and violation of the party's constitution and the amended Electoral Act. According to the plaintiff, the party did not hold its state congress at the state secretariat, failed to inform aspirants on the would-be congress, and also misled its national headquarters after holding the exercise in a farm. The judge instructed that another state congress be organized to carry every member along.
Ogoja.
The chairman of the All Progressives Congress in Cross River State, Alphonsus Eba, has described the victory of the party at the Ogoja Yala Federal Constituency by-election as one based on merit. He dared members of the opposition parties to go to court should they be at variance with the outcome of the exercise. Mr. Eba commended the innovation of the BVAS technology in the voting exercise, as it has given room to only those with permanent voters' cards to vote.
The people have spoken through their generous will.
A pressure group has asked the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, to throw his hat in the ring ahead of the 2023 presidential election. The group said Mr. Emefiele has shown competence as head of the nation's apex bank and should qualify to contest for the #1 position in the country come 2023. With a few weeks left before the Anambra State Governor Willie Obiano hands over the affairs of the state, he has been expressing his gratitude for the support enjoyed while in office. Governor Obiano was speaking while meeting members of the State Elders Council on a farewell note. And after months of dispute over the Osun APC governorship primary, a group of civil society leaders gathered in Ikeja, Lagos today with the theme Power, Politics and Democracy in the Southwest. The main focus is on how to bring top politicians in the dispute between a chieftain of the APC, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, and the Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, to the reconciliation table.
Well, it's just about 25 days to the All Progressives Congress National Convention, and governors of the party have met with President Muhammadu Buhari today at a presidential villa in Abuja. After the meeting, the chairman of the APC Governors Forum, Abubakar Bagudu of Kebbi State, speaks on the outcome of the meeting.
We came to discuss the National Convention, which is slated for March 26, and are working hard to ensure that on March 26, we have our convention and elect our national officers. And that remains the case. The 22 governors of APC are united behind the party and behind the Mr. President.
It was a day of mixed feelings as the National Assembly today voted on the relevant clauses up for amendment in the ongoing constitutional amendment exercise. Over 60 clauses were put up for the voting, for some of which include issues relating to autonomy for local government administration of judiciary in Nigeria, and several other critical portions. But sadly, all the women-related bills failed to sail through. Before the voting began, President Buhari's letter to the National Assembly was read, where he was seeking the amendment of the Section 84, Sub 12 of the Electoral Act, which he raised alarm over, or which he spoke about after he signed the bill into law last week, Friday. With today's voting and all of this process done today, there are just about 3 more stages to conclude the process of amending the Constitution, which will make perhaps the 5th alterations, if my calculations is right, to the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended. Well, let's take a look at perhaps some of the list and some of the issues that were voted today, some of which include the autonomy for issues of financial autonomy for local government, devolution of powers, affirmative action for women in political party administration, restriction of formation of political parties, inclusion of judges of the National Industrial Court in the composition of election tribunal, expansion of the scope of executive immunity, time frame for the submission of the names of ministerial or commissioner nominees, establishment of a State Security Council, power to summon the president and governors, traditional rulers and institutions and their roles in governance, reserved quota for women, creation of the Office of the Accountant General of the federal government, time frame for the conduct of population census. There are a whole lot of these clauses that are being looked into today. Well, eminent Nigerians have clamored for restructuring of the country and questioned the state of our federalism. Well, In all of what has happened today, you'll be asking a big question. A lot of people have criticized the state of our constitution, whether or not is the kind of constitution that we need, restructuring, whether or not is the way to go. Our federalism, is it the best one that we should be operating? So many questions on constitutionalism and the issue of our federalism. Let's get a sense of this amendment process and the implications for Nigeria. I'm being joined tonight by a renowned Nigerian constitutional lawyer, senior advocate of Nigeria. He's the author of more than 10 books, law books, which has become some of the greatest resource materials for law students in Nigeria. One of his so popular Law of Contract book by Sage, a foremost law teacher who was appointed by President Muhammadu Buhari as a chairman of Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, Professor Isha Sage. He joins us from Lagos. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us tonight. How does it come to you? Because I know you're one of those who have argued and debated extensively on the state of our constitution, on the state of our federalism. Give us a sense tonight of what you make of the process of amending the constitution.
Yes, Shehu. First, I must say, I'm not a constitutional lawyer by training. We all became constitutional lawyers by necessity. So I don't want to give myself that title. Now, coming up to what's happening, I've gone through most of the items which the National Assembly has taken up, and unfortunately, it has conformed with what I've always felt about their modifications of the Constitution. They are totally irrelevant to our needs at the moment. What we want, what is necessary, what is causing a lot of problems in the country is a question of restructuring, the question of having a true federalism. They've not touched that at all. We should be, if I may give an example of what I'm talking about, we should be talking of funding formula for the federation. There should be no federation account. We should retain the provisions of the 1963 Constitution, under which each region, and now state, retains 50% of its resources, sends 20% to the federal government, and sends 30% to a distributable pool to be distributed amongst the members of the states of the federation in accordance with your level of sufficiency in terms of provisions. So under the distributable pool, the least able states, the poorest states, get more from that pool. But every state, even the rich ones, also get some. So that is one. And under that formula, that 50 for the state, 20 for the federal government, 30 for the to the distributable pool. Then I noticed a lot of attention was spent on issues that are totally irrelevant with regard to local government. We should not be talking of local government at all in the Constitution. What they should discuss is total removal of the provisions of local government from the Constitution. The Constitution should not tell us what we should do about our local government. It should not contain a list of our local governments. The local government is a state matter, completely, 100% state matter. Has nothing to do with the federal government, nothing to do with states. So when you talk of local government, funding of local government, how to create a special account for local government separate from state government, they're all irrelevant. Because it shouldn't be in the Constitution at all. The state, there are only two members in a federation, two federation units in a federation. Federal, state. Federal, state. Local government does not come in. The local government is a creature of the state. It belongs to the state 100%. Federal government and the Constitution have nothing to do with it. So it is for the state to determine how many local government it wants, what is the type of local government it wants. It may decide that there will be no democratic local governments. Rather, they will post civil servants to administer local governments. We had that under the colonial government. We had district officers running local governments. So the state has nothing to do with it. The federal government has nothing to do with it. It shouldn't be in the Constitution. That's a state matter. So the state determines how many local governments it wants, where they are to be located, and most importantly, will be totally and fully responsible for funding it. It's not the duty of the federation to be funding local governments. So the question of creating special account for it should not arise. There should be no account for local government. There should be no federating account. There should be budget of federal government separate, budget of states separate, and the state should now create its own account for its own local governments. The same thing with the police force. That's what I expected this constitutional review to talk about.
One of the things that you are saying now,
allowing
like some kind of
state
a
governments to have
departure
police
from from the provision of the 1999 Constitution. Section 7 stresses and talked about the structure of local government and its administration. And if going by what you have explained tonight, in the kind of a structure of federalism that we need to operate, that would be a very radical move. But for you tonight, Prof, what can you tell us that is, I'm looking at the agitation for restructuring, whether or not what the lawmakers today did served to an extent those agitations of those who are seeking or asking for restructuring. Did it in any way touch on it? Did it in any way serve those agitations?
Well, from what I've heard so far, nothing on restructuring has been touched. I would suggest to you that you should list those items to me. And then maybe I'm overlooking something, and I will express my views.
Take up the issue of the devolution of powers, for example. They touched on devolution of power. They talked, I mean, local government, you sufficiently spoken about financial autonomy for local government. You are of the view that local government should not even reflect in the structure of federal state operations. They talked about the restriction of formation of political parties, the issues of immunity. They talked also about the establishment of State Security Council. That is a very big one. They also talked about the power to summon the president and the governors. And in the structure of the country also, the role of the traditional rulers, whom are now going to be advisors to the state or the federal government in their own respect. So how do you react to some of these areas?
Well, I mean, some of them are neither here nor there. The role of the traditional rulers, for example, if they are not elected, what sort of powers could be given to them that are enforceable at law? So that is an issue that arises. I don't want a situation in which we put various actors in the Constitution and then not give them power or a role. So we have to be careful to avoid merely listing the traditional rulers without giving them an effective role. Yeah. Please, can I have, what are the
one
other
of the areas that did not go through is the pensions for some National Assembly members, the presiding officers of the National Assembly, that failed. How do you react to that?
I think quite rightly it should fail, and I'm glad it failed. We are still angry about governors who have this humongous pension arrangements which give them resources and funds that are simply beyond belief. While we are still trying to cope with that, some people want to allow the heads of the legislative houses to come into that, to enjoy the same sort of resources from leading forces. So I think it's a very good, that's a good decision of the National Assembly today. And hopefully the same thing will happen to the governors through resolutions of the various houses of assembly.
That is of interest is they passed the power to empower National Assembly and the state assemblies to summon the president or governors in the areas of security. When there are security concerns, they pass that the clause to the power of the parliament or the legislative arm of government to summon the president, as the case may be, for the National Assembly, and the governors, as the case may be, for the state houses of assembly. How does that sound to you?
I don't like that language, to summon. You don't summon your head of state. The head of state is the #1 citizen of this country. He is a representative at the international level. And he has to be respected. You can't summon him. I think these are houses of assembly and National Assembly should be very careful of the sort of mentality they have and the sort of language they use. If they say invite, you can invite, and you don't need to make it compulsory. A head of state who is in tune with the way the country is being run and has an interest in the way in the way this country should be governed, will respond positively to a genuine invitation by any assembly, whether national or state. But to say you want to have power to summon, so you want to turn the head of state into your subordinate, that is a sort of mentality that I detest, and I don't agree with that.
About the clause that relates to the state of the nation and state of the state address. State of the state address in the state, state of the nation address for the federal. I think that went that sailed through.
Oh, that is that there should be a state of nation address and state of state address. Yes, I think it's a good idea. That will give the chief executive at both federal and state level the opportunity of explaining what they had done during their tenure, what they plan to do, and to use that opportunity to invite both the legislatures and even the ordinary citizen to cooperate with them in achieving these state objectives. I think that's a positive decision.
But, Prof, I mean, this is perhaps not a good one for women or women folk who looked towards about almost 6 or 5 bills or more. Women bill today failed, both on both. One went through at the Senate, but all of the bills in the National Assembly relating to women and the rights of women, issue of citizenship, issue of indigenship, and all a lot of those issues that are related to women fail today. What is happening? Is it that our laws are becoming patriarchal by the day, and we have a system that doesn't really like women, or what is happening?
Yes, we have seen that given a level playing field, women still cannot compete with our men for political positions for all reasons. Some of the reasons I hear is that meetings are held at night and the women cannot attend such meetings, which is fair enough. But I think what the National Assembly should have done would have been to make provision for a certain percentage of seats for women in the legislatures. And so that whether they contest with men or not, they will be guaranteed that minimum number of seats. So to that extent, I think the House that rejected the bill was wrong. But again, I don't know how many seats they were trying to create. Maybe somebody proposed too many seats. So if the seats are too many, that could be a discouraging factor. But otherwise, the principle is good. That women should be guaranteed a minimum number of seats.
There's one area, Prof, that I know is probably going to be of interest. One of the bills that passed, that went through today, is they approved the bill including presiding officers in the National Assembly on the membership of the National Security Council. And it does look like the National Assembly has also criminalized or made an offense if you're summoned before or make a possible conviction of any person who refuses to honor the summons of the National Assembly or any of its committees.
Okay, I think the first provision is quite a positive provision. That is that the heads of the legislative houses should be members of the Security Council, both federal and state. I think it's a good idea because if you will note that the president of the Senate, for example, is the number 3 citizen of this country, and the Speaker of the House is the number 4. So if the Chief Justice is going to be there, why shouldn't the 2 of them be there? So to that extent, I support that provision. What was the second provision issue you raised?
Penalize or make an offense anybody that is summoned by the National Assembly and fail to show up in any of its committees. They pass the bill to make such an action an offense.
No, I think that is definitely reprehensible. It will be abused. And what I have noticed is that the National Assembly particularly not only wants to be a law-making body, they want to be a judicial body too, because these judicial powers they're trying to wield. And they also want to be an executive body, because we pass resolutions and expect it to be binding, whereas it's merely suggestive to the executive, just merely recommendatory to the executive, but they want it to bind. So they want to make they want to take executive decisions that are binding. Now they want to be members of the judiciary by having people arrested and tried by simply by the fact that such people did not appear when they were invited. And it could be that at the time they are invited, the period was not convenient for them. Maybe they had some more important national assignments. And my experience is that the National Assembly has never been satisfied with explanations. No, that power will be abused, and it is the judicial power. So I'm against it.
Prof, we need to take a break. But when we come back, I'll need your help to clarify in your closing moments with us tonight. Whether or not there is a constitutional conflict with the Electoral Act on the Section 84, subsection 12, which the President raised. He wrote back to the National Assembly for them to amend it. Whether or not any sitting political appointee of government who is willing to run for office should resign, whether that's in a conflict or their human right or their right of franchise, we would like you to clarify that for us as you close with you, Prof. Stay with us, Professor Sage. We're back in a moment. And again, after when we come back, I'll be having a former federal lawmaker, Senator Ayo Arishe, and Cynthia Imbamalu, a women rights advocate and a lawyer, who will talk more on the issues raised in today's proceeding of the National Assembly. Both of them will be breaking it down further for us tonight. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Our closing moments now with Professor Iche Sage, a renowned law teacher in Nigeria and senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you so much, Professor Sage, for your time tonight. My final question to you tonight will be on the concern of President Buhari on Electoral Act 2022, and is written to the National Assembly asking them to look into it. There's been debate on whether or not there is a clash or whether or not that provision is ultra-vires. What's your view?
Well, I want to start by saying that the National Assembly has a big problem. That is that whatever they do, they must provide something for themselves. They don't have the culture of passing a law for the sake of that law and for the sake of the people, but they must also insert something in everything they are doing for themselves. And that is what is causing all this confusion. First, we had the electoral bill, which was supposed to go to the president for signature. They added direct primaries for themselves. Direct primaries for themselves. How to give them advantage over governors and so on. Personal, they put it there. The president objected to it. He said, please remove it and send it back without direct primaries provision, and I will sign. What did they do? They went back to the old habit again. They now brought in a new provision which will make it, which will compel government appointees in the executive to resign before they contest the election. Again, for themselves, so that they can increase their own chances of success in an election at the expense of such appointees. So that is why the president again hesitated in signing it. And I think he was very generous to have signed that bill. If I were the president, I would not sign it. I would send it back to them to remove that section, making it compulsory for appointees in government to resign, because that was not in the bill. It was just done for their own self-interest. Now, on the issue of the Constitution already has provision in that respect. That is 30 days. The Constitution provides 30 days for those who are appointees in government to resign if they are contesting an election. And the law is very clear. Once the Constitution has made a provision, any other provision is illegal and unenforceable. We have a series of Supreme Court cases on this point. You cannot add to, you cannot improve, you cannot reduce from anything that has been put in the Constitution. It must be applied exactly as it is stated in the Constitution. What they are trying to do is an amendment of the Constitution by normal bill, and that is illegal. The electoral bill was a normal bill. It was not a constitutional review bill. So to introduce a provision which changes the Constitution, which it has done, is illegal. So frankly, whether they go back to change it or not, if I'm a contestant in government, if I'm an appointee, I will resign 30 days to an election. I go and contest that election. And I will see anybody trying to challenge me because of an illegal provision that it quietly slipped into the electoral bill. So, in my view, they have a moral duty to remove that provision. And if they don't remove it, let all those affected by it go on and carry on their election right, enforce their election rights in accordance with the Constitution, not in accordance with an illegal provision in the electoral bill. So that's my view.
Professor Esasage, always a pleasure having you speak to us on the position of law and the very important state of the nation matters like this. Thank you so much, Prof, for joining us tonight. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Well, we've been talking about all of these provisions. Let me just flash them through for you again so you can see, from the issue of local government financial autonomy to the devolution of powers, affirmative action for women in political party administration, restriction of formation of political parties, inclusion of judges of the National Industrial Court in the composition of election tribunals, expansion of the scope of executive immunity. These are areas that were put up for a vote. But you probably will be asking the question that in all of these clauses and all of that, is this the end? No, this is not the end. There is a constitutional provision on how a legislative action on constitutional amendment should go. Let me show you what it means. This is the third reading of it. When it's done, the next stage will be the harmonization of all of these between the two chambers, because, you know, they voted in the House and they also voted in the Senate. Both houses will now harmonize, and when they harmonize, they'll put it together and send it to the state houses of assemblies across the 36 states, and the state houses of assembly, according to the provision of the Constitution, will have to pass it by 2/3, just like we have the 2/3 according to Section 9 of the Nigerian Constitution on the issues of amendment. Let's get talking about some of the issues that have been raised. Well, one matter of interest is the position of the Women Bill. Let me allow you to listen to Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, the Speaker, when he was reacting to what happened to the Women Bill. What happened to them? Take a listen to him.
We'll put the votes again. Understand that it is this woman, honorable members. If you do your math and you do your statistics, you will understand that it is this woman that come out en masse to vote for you and I. They come out en masse to vote for you and I. You cannot now be seen working against their interests. This particular provision on party administration, I will publish this vote. Honorable colleagues, hey Mohammed, go and take your seat so that we can vote again. We are going to vote again.
Without advocacy, it still did not go through. What a sad day for women interests in our law-making process in Nigeria, despite the advocacy from the wife of the president, who was there at some point. Today, the wife of the vice president, Dolapo Oshibajo, was also there to advocate. Very sad day. She was not happy today. Well, let's get talking. Let's get the experience of a former federal lawmaker, Senator Ayo Arishe. He joins us here. And Cynthia Mbamalu, she works with Yaga Africa, a lawyer and woman advocate. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Perhaps I should begin with Cynthia. You might be smiling when I know you're not happy today.
No.
What happened? What do you think happened to the women bills?
I think first it was disheartening to watch how each bill proposed received a negative vote. So we had 5 bills. The one on citizenship, which basically says that women can confer citizenship to their foreign husbands because Nigerian men can do that to their foreign wives. They voted no. So basically they just told Nigerian women that you're not seen as equal citizens. That was the message to Nigerian women. The second was the bill on the legislative seats, asking or proposing for an amendment to create seats for women in the Senate, in the House, and the state assemblies. This bill also got a no vote. And basically what this bill was supposed to do was to ensure that there would be no time in our history again where you would have assemblies without women. Because currently, 15 states in Nigeria do not have one woman in their state assemblies. We have regions that have no women representatives in the Senate and the House. That bill got a no vote. The other bill was on indigenship, which basically was saying for women who marry men from other states, that they can, after 5 years, after paying tax and all the requirements in the Constitution, can claim the indigenship of that state. And that is because a lot of women, when you marry from another state, and for instance, you want to contest for elections, they will tell you, oh, this is not your state, go to your husband, go back to your state. You go to your state will tell you, no, this is not your state, go back to your husband's state. We have married you off.
I remember the case of a Supreme Court judge, Justice of the Supreme Court from, I think, Borno State, who is married to someone from Ogun State, and she couldn't claim...
Yes, because
these issues have come over and over
that bill
again.
also failed. Then the issue around affirmative action on political party leadership, asking that women should have at least 35% affirmative action. They said no. There was a point of order called asking for an amendment to reduce it to even 20%. It still went no. You see the other speaker even pleaded at one point on that particular provision. They still voted no for it. And then the provisions on appointment for executive, that's for ministers and commissioners at the state level. So basically, all the proposals on gender failed, and it's just disheartening to Nigerian
I understand
women.
You people are not, when I say you people, I mean the women folk are not taking it lightly.
No, we are going to National Assembly tomorrow. We need to be there, to camp there, to march and demand that Nigerian lawmakers respond to us.
Is it not late in the day?
Well, for what matters is we're not taking this lying down, because most times we have... Every assembly, there are proposals on women. Every alteration, there are proposals for women. They never make it through. This time around, there was some hope, because this time around, it was part of the report submitted to the Senate and the House last week, where the First Lady was actually present with other ministers, with ministers of several bodies to witness that. And there were commitments, there was lobbying, there was advocacy. What was not done?
I'll come back to you, Cynthia, to find out. I mean, we need to do a research why has been happening. And there's a downward trend or decline in women position in the National Assembly. But Senator, you've been in that allo chamber before. For you today, as a citizen of Nigeria, and hearing and watching those votes being cast, and it was electronic votes. I think in the House of Reps, I didn't know what happened, much of the details of the Senate, or how they voted. But for what happened today in this process, what is the most crucial part of these clauses for you?
Well, first of all, I look at the local government issue. And I have to support Professor Sage. Based on the fact that you can't allocate local governments in a fixative manner. In 2010, we discussed this. You cannot say, look at my state, for example. The governor just had additional local SCDAs.
That's in Ekiti State.
Yes. States cannot grow at the same pace. When you look at a local government, and you now realize that suddenly you have a federal university, suddenly you have a teaching hospital, so you have so many things. So by definition of what constitutes a local government, that particular one has grown and it needs to be subdivided. That can only be done at the state level. The federal, when I look at, many times I refer to the practice in the US. I don't know any federal government in America that will create a local government, let's say in the state of Georgia. It cannot be done. It's a state matter. And when you look at it again, because it's a state matter, when you begin to grow, because no state is stationary, you now need subdivisions. But the clause 8, 7 and 8 combined of our Constitution does not allow you to create, it's made it almost impossible
to create
more local
and
governments.
that's why Lagos, the AG, the case of the AG Lagos versus AG Federation, there was a very, during Tinubu and Obasanjo,
yes,
it was a very tough battle. And
exactly.
no states have been able to do that.
No.
Because the Constitution of the Federal Republic has made it almost impossible for you to alter or add to local government.
Or add to the local government. And the solution again is the federal government having a pause and the states having their own pause. Like I explained, if the state decides to create 1,000 local governments, that's the business of that state. Where they will find the money to fund it is the headache. If you look at it that, okay, the number of local governments you can handle is just 10. Good for it. Then you make provisions, you provide roads, you provide amenities, and not, this is all we are talking about. The federal government cannot come and create or come and start tiling roads in a local government from the federal. So these are some of the anomalies that we saw there.
Let me just remember, because there are other areas, state policing, security, which I would like you to touch on. But let's quickly take another break. And when we come back, this is a very short one. We get to talk more. Stay with us, everyone. So much. Let's get back to Senator Ayarishi and Cynthia Mbamalu. For you, Senator, the agitation for restructuring, like the question I asked Prof earlier, did you see some of these questions being answered?
Very minimally.
We saw establishment of State Security Council.
State Security Council means what?
I mean, there's a National Security Council.
Would you have state police? So that is what everybody has been agitating for.
And that's not included.
I don't know whether the State Security Council is equivalent of that. So I don't know the meaning of what State Security Council means when we're asking for states to be able to have their own police, local governments, if possible, to have their own police. We have it broken down all the way to city police. We copied the American Constitution. It's working for them. Some of these minuses that we've not been able to resolve in our society is why the Constitution is a little bit very controversial. And people keep on agitating for amendment, and we all know what people are asking for. They want security. Everybody wants to be safe, if it is possible.
But our Constitution is very stringent on how you can amend the areas. At least, I mean, you need for fifth in some of these, the National Youth Service Corps Decree, the Public Complaints Commission Act, the National Security Agency Act, the Land Use Act, as much as he made some sections, early sections in the of the Constitution very difficult.
Yes.
So he made some of these, and so the question would be, if you want to do state policing, how easy would the Constitution? The Constitution does not even give you that elasticity to be able to do so.
Well, this is the process. You amend the Constitution. The moment you remove that clause and replace it, it's amended. When this Constitution was put together, we did not have the kind of challenges we have today. And again, the population of this country continues to grow and multiply. So will the social problems continue to expand? And you now look at it that, can we continue to say it's no longer feasible for the federal to control the policing of the state or the local government? We've made it very clear. If, of course, you have the FBI, you have state police, I mean, maybe state police, you have county police, you have city police. And but any moment the federal police comes in, they establish jurisdiction. And that is the minimum we're expecting here. Nobody says you should eradicate the federal police. But let the state be able to ensure that that the people are secure.
Cynthia, you're one of those who've spoken about this process for a long time. But for you, today, what is perhaps one most crucial part of these almost, I think it's almost 80 or 90 clauses that were put up for today?
Yeah, about something clauses. So the thing is, besides the women bills that all failed, because that it was heartbreaking. I felt like the country did not want women to exist in the country, which is really sad. But I think we made some progress. So local government autonomy is actually an important conversation we need to have. And I know there are conversations around, do we need that in the constitution? But I think we need to understand that every constitution is a reflection of the reality of the nature of the particular country. So while our constitution is modeled after the US Constitution, but we do not adopt everything per se. So for instance, if you go to the US, states have their constitution. We don't have that here.
And
we
have
the
Supreme Courts
and they have that
judicial system.
the judicial system, the way they even appoint members of their judiciary, right? And the way it is appointed some at the state level, they haven't elected, they contest for it. But we don't have that here. Why? Because our reality is different. And in a multi-ethnic nation, conversation around federalism caters to the needs of smaller groups at the local level, which is what we have. In a state, you can have up to 5, 6, 7 ethnic groups in a particular state. Now, what does local government autonomy do? The provision now, what it does is to recognize this as a tier of government, this proposal in the Constitution, no longer what we had before, because what we had before made it subject to the states, which is why you go to some states, elections to local governments are not held 5, 6, 7, 10 years. You don't have elections at that level, just appointments. But what this does now is, with this proposal, if it passes at the state level, it recognizes the local government as an independent tier of government which exists and has its own administration and tenure of office, because it also proposes for 3 years, which is important because it brings governance closer to the people. Our reality is we currently have a system where state governors are almost dictatorial and imperial leaders who control everything at the state level. We still talk about state assemblies independence, not to mention local government. So it's important we have this in the bill that is proposed. And I think something else we need to understand is that while there are provisions in this bill which thankfully did not make it true. But I think there's an important point was made by the Prof that the National Assembly needs to learn to be more nationalistic in its thinking, or rather to focus on national interest than its personal interest. Some proposals that made it from the committee to the plenary were not a reflection of proposals from the public hearing that citizens engaged in. So it's almost like it's only the things that favor them that would make it in. I'm not quick to celebrate the proposal that pension, life pension for prisoners defailed. I'm not quick to celebrate it, but I'm glad I was glad it was. But it was only shut down because most of the lawmakers did not think they will benefit from it. So it was very, very...
Senator, you know this process very well. You've gone through it. Do you see any problem coming in the way of these votes when it goes into the State House of Assemblies?
Yes. Problem? Yes, because the governors control the state assemblies, pure and simple.
So that's another problem.
And it's whatever they do not want will certainly not sail through. So if we are talking of financial autonomy for the local governments, we did that in 2010. This only 23 states when would the National Assembly?
And for 2/3, you need almost 20...
At least 24.
Exactly. We couldn't get it done because the governors did not support most of those amendments. And I'm suspecting that some of this will still go there and will not make it. The only reason why I believe the National Assembly, I believe certainly there was no reason for them to retain immunity.
To retain what?
To retain immunity. Not to talk less of the asking for immunity for themselves.
An expansion,
But trust me,
the scope of immunity.
If it had covered everybody, then the result we are discussing now will not be what we are discussing. If they had said every National Assembly member should have immunity or pension, who would not want pension? But when they keep on making the mistake that is only the two, or maybe 4
presiding officers,
they will continue to get this guy. It's not that they don't want it.
All right.
It's because it doesn't cover everybody. So,
thank you so much. Senator Ayodeji, always a pleasure sharing your experience and the knowledge of the electoral process with us and how this is panned out. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for coming. I appreciate it. But that's our show for today, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kimale. Bye for now.